Hello, programmers. Greetings and welcome to Java Programming. You are assigned a lab where you are asked to input 10 numbers and find the sum of all the odd numbers, the sum of all the even numbers, the sum of all the numbers, the smallest, the largest, and the average of all the numbers. You are also asked to find the range of the input values. Here is the lab assignment. Let's look closely at the definition to determine the input, output, and processing to satisfy the requirements of the project. First, determine the inputs. Those are stated right at the beginning of the project definition. Read 10 numbers as integers. Next, determine the outputs. Sum of all the odd numbers, sum of all the even numbers, sum of all the numbers. Determine the range of numbers. Those are the lowest and highest values. Display the average of all the numbers. The project definition also states that your program should not ask the user to input the even and odd numbers separately, or that numbers are entered in any order. After we have determined the inputs and outputs, we need to see what needs to be done to get the program to take the inputs and create the outputs. This is called processing. Here is the pseudocode. Loop count equal 1. Initialize the loop counter. While loop count is less than or equal to 10, read number from the keyboard. Compute the total of all the odd numbers. Compute the total of all the even numbers. Compute the total of all numbers. Determine the smallest and largest number. Increment the loop count. End loop. We'll keep going through this loop until we have all the numbers processed. It looks like there is one more thing that needs to be included in the program. Add input validation to reject negative numbers. There's also an extra credit section of the assignment. In addition to displaying the three sums and range, display the average of all 10 numbers with 2 digits past the decimal. To help you get started programming, I have provided you with most of the Java code for the project. It is going to be up to you to complete the project for the required input validation and extra credit if you choose to do it. Here is a sample run of the program. 10 different numbers are input. At the bottom, the program displays the sum of odd numbers, the sum of even numbers, the sum of all numbers, the lowest value, and the highest value. You do not need to use the set of numbers that I chose. For your lab report, you need to show 3 screenshots. 1. Run the program with 10 input values. 2. Run the program with a different set of 10 numbers. 3. Run the program showing what happens when a negative value is input. I have provided the HIPO chart for your lab report this time. You will need to complete the HIPO chart on future lab reports. HIPO stands for Hierarchical Input Process Output. The input section is simple, 10 numbers. The output section for this assignment is also fairly simple. Display the 3 sums, the lowest and highest value, and average. The process section of the HIPO chart is the most complex of the 3. It contains a brief pseudocode description of the processing that is to be done. Pseudocode is a high-level description of the program in human-readable format. It typically does not contain the variable declaration or the syntax-specific details that are necessary for program to compile. When it is your turn to fill out the HIPO chart, you will not get credit for this part of the lab assignment if you just paste in your Java code instead of using pseudocode for the process section. We will see the same things in programming. It does not really matter if you input the hours before the pay rate when computing the paycheck, but you cannot compute and print the paycheck before you input the hours and pay rate. The most common statement when doing a selection is the if statement. The if statement starts by testing a logical expression that must evaluate to true or false. If the expression evaluates to true, then the rest of the if statement is executed. The if statement can also have an else clause with a statement that gets executed when the expression evaluates to a false. Sequence, repetition, selection can be combined. In this flowchart, the body of the loop has a selection statement. If the input value is odd, one set of instructions is executed. Else, another set of instructions is executed when the input value is even. In this case, the selection is implemented as an if-else, and it occurs within the body of the while loop. Here is some sample code in Java that implements most of the project. Don't worry about reading the small print. It is available on the class Canvas website. At the top is the title block with a brief description of what the program does. You should put your name and date there when you type the program yourself. Then come any import statements, constants, and global variables. Next is the body of the program. Inside it are the definitions for the local variables, input, process, and output. The float or double data type should never be used to control a counting loop such as a while or for. For example, if the double data type is used, the value in it might be 9.999999999 instead of 10.0. In either case, the value might be rounded up to a 10 when it is displayed, but the true values of 9.99999999999 would actually be in memory. Looping while the value is less than or equal to 10 would cause the loop not to stop when the value of 10.9999999 is reached. In this case, the program would loop 11 times instead of 10. A prompt is a message that the program displays on the screen requesting the input from the user. The word comes from the theater. Think of a teleprompter that puts up text for someone who is reading a speech. If there were no prompt message and the program only used standard in.nextInt to read the number from the keyboard, the only thing that would show up on the screen would be a flashing cursor, and the people would have no idea of what to do, or even if the program was working. Look closely at enter a number. There is a space after the colon. Although the space does not have anything to do with making the program work correctly, the space is there to provide a separation between the prompt and the user's input. It just makes the program look better. Otherwise, when the user types a number, it will be right next to the colon character. The expression inside the parentheses of the if statement reads number %2 = 1. In the order of precedence, add, subtract, multiply, and divide all have a higher precedence than the == test for equality. The %mod operator performs an integer division and returns the remainder instead of the quotient. The remainder of any number divided by 2, it's either going to be a 0 or a 1. If the remainder is a 1, then the number is odd. If the number is odd, then add the number to the sum of the odd numbers. The sum of odd numbers was initially set to 0 outside the while loop when the variable was declared. Now, each time through the loop, we will either add the input number to either the sum of odd numbers or the sum of even numbers. The statement sum of all numbers plus equal number, semicolon, is outside of the if-else statement, therefore giving us the sum of all numbers. Looking at this set of numbers, it is fairly easy to determine the smallest and largest number. 4 is the smallest and 22 is the largest. The Little League coach would shout, "Good eye, good eye," when the batter didn't swing at a ball that was out of range. Good eye means good eye, good eye. An algorithm for determining the smallest and largest values needs to be a little more sophisticated. When developing an algorithm for a computer program, we need to start off by saving the first value as both the smallest and largest. As we read each successive value, compare it to the current value in smallest and largest and see if we need to update either of these values. Let's see how it works to determine the smallest value. Start with 17 as the min value. When the 5 is read, it is smaller than 17, so now 5 is saved as the min value. When a 9 is read, it is bigger than 5, so 5 stays as the min value. When the 4 is read, it is smaller than the 5, so 4 replaces the 5 as the new min value. As we keep reading more numbers, none of them are smaller than the 4, so the 4 remains as the min value. The similar process occurs when determining the largest value, except that we compare to see if the new number is larger than the current max value. By the end of the loop, the smallest and largest values have been determined. The last part of the input process output is the output. The print line statement automatically moves the cursor down to the next line on the screen. Extra spaces are added to the strings to get the columns to line up so that they look nice on the screen. There are two parts of the program to be completed. The required section is for you to reject negative numbers and display the sum of even, odd, and all numbers, and the average of all the numbers. Look at the program to determine where the numbers are input from the keyboard. Then you should be able to figure out where to insert the code to reject negative values. Make sure that the program displays an appropriate message and then does not process the bad data. The extra credit section should be fairly simple. The average is computed by taking the sum of all the numbers and dividing it by the count of how many numbers were entered. There are two problems to be solved for the extra credit. Numbers are to be entered as integers, but the average needs to display the result with 2 digits past the decimal. That means that the average must be declared as a double data type, and at least either the numerator or denominator of the division must be a double. The other problem is that you need the system.out.printf to display 2 digits past the decimal. Refer to the Paycheck Lab. In order to receive the extra credit points, the required section of rejected negative values must be completed, and the extra credit section must be submitted when the lab report is submitted, and not at a later time. I hope you enjoy this lab while figuring out the missing parts of the program. Now, have fun with the extra credit. It should not be too hard to earn those extra points. Bye-bye for now.